Welcome back to Americanuck Radio, everybody. This hour is going fast. I can't believe that we're already at the halfway mark. Dangerous, dangerous times in North America and the Western world. Donald John Trump is leading the charge against the forces of political correctness and the progressive crowd that would absolutely destroy everything that we know and take it all away. But luckily, there are people out there that are fighting the good fight, and one of them is Dr. Dave Janda, and he is going to be our guest here on Americanuck Radio to talk about the swamp draining. And this guy is what you would call an insider in the swamp draining effort. He was referred to me by my good friend, Dr. Peter Glidden, and Dr. Glidden has been working with him. He's a retired orthopedic surgeon. He is just an absolutely excellent guy to have on the show. Dr. Janda, have we got you live?
We sure do. Thanks for having me along, Mike.
Absolutely, sir. Now, I was just talking about our mutual connections, Dr. Peter Glidden, General Val Ali, and I actually had been following your work for quite a long time before I found out that I knew people that were connected with you. And as soon as I did find that out, I bugged them and I pressured them relentlessly until I got through to you because I wanted you on my show. Let's just talk a little bit about Dr. Glidden. Is that guy amazing or what? I've seen absolute what people would consider miracles, and yourself being an MD, it's a little bit of an unlikely alliance between the two of you, but what have you seen since you've been working with Dr. Glidden?
Well, Peter is not only a fantastic physician, but he's a fantastic human being. And he brings to the floor information that the globalist syndicate, the New World Order, their tentacle, the big pharmaceutical industry, the big insurance industry, big medicine, what I call the medical industrial complex, does not want people to know about. And Peter's a very courageous individual for doing so. You know, Peter and I, every other week on my YouTube channel, Operation Freedom, do a 20 to 30-minute video on how folks can empower themselves by making themselves healthier and focus on wellness and nutritional support. This is an issue, Mike, that was not covered when I was in medical school or internship or residency or fellowship. And the reason is because the big pharmaceutical companies control the medical education complex. And what Peter focuses on is how the body has its own internal, not only regulating system, but healing system. And with the appropriate nutrients, what he discusses, the 90 essential nutrients, by having those 90 essential nutrients, we can address issues as it relates to illness and disease. And let me give you an example. I have a history of having this fairly significant arthritis. And I practiced orthopedic surgery for 32 years, and it involves a lot of heavy activity, lifting and positioning, and they're not light cases to do, if you will. And that progressed my arthritis. And Peter, I at the time had been on, my colleagues, MDs, had recommended and put me on anti-inflammatories, and then, you know, when they weren't holding me the pharmaceutical-grade anti-inflammatories, they were adding arthritis-strength Tylenol, and they were talking about adding a second anti-inflammatory. And Peter said to me, you know, Dave, you don't need those medications, the pharmaceutical-grade anti-inflammatories, and the others. It's a nutritional issue. And frankly, Mike, I kind of fought him on it because that's not what my training had taught me.
I thought that that might have come into play, but go on, Dr. Janda, and then I want to get over to the swamp.
It got to the point where what I ended up doing is listening to Peter. And I went on these 90 essential nutrients, and we have a site that we've developed, Peter and I, that focus on the videos we've done, the information the 90 essential nutrients, the products themselves, OperationFreedomHealth.com. And what I did is I took Peter's advice and I started taking the 90 essential nutrients and through the Healthy Body Start Pack that he recommended. And within a month, Mike, I was off all anti-inflammatories, and I was able to do things that I hadn't done activity-wise in several years.
Yeah, it's the same old story, Dr. Janda. I've heard it over and over again. And, I mean, it was the same thing. My wife had chronic pain that was just killing her. I had asthma and allergies my whole life. I heard Dr. Peter Glidden over on the GCN network because I was looking for something to fix our health, and I couldn't find it, but I knew it wasn't in the conventional medical system. But I found his radio show, and in short order, we invited him up here to speak. We became friends. Then I was hosting his show, and now I'm back on mainstream radio, network radio, because of my relationship with Dr. Glidden. And not only that, but we produce the Tactical Health podcast twice a week. There's like hundreds of them. If you go to Americanuckradio.com, you can become a subscriber and listen to Dr. Glidden and I discuss fake health news and all kinds of stuff whenever you want if you can't get enough of the Americanuck. So, Dr. Janda, you have been around the D.C. area. You've had some things happen to you. Seems to me like the major swamp fighters out there were created by a bad situation. They got jerked around by the federal government or the FDA or somebody. What's your story briefly, sir?
Well, as I mentioned, I practiced orthopedic surgery for 32 years, retired in January 1st, 2017. In addition to my work in orthopedic surgery, Mike, I focused on prevention-related research, preventing people from getting injured.
Right.
The most cost-effective way of cutting healthcare costs for every person in our country is to focus on prevention and wellness, rather than trying to cut costs through rationing and denying of care, which insurance companies, government bureaucrats, pharmaceuticals, they all want to do. That's the wrong approach. The right approach is prevention and wellness. Now, I started focusing on some studies early on in my career, and one of the studies of which I was lead investigator for, according to the Center for Disease and Control and Prevention, led to the prevention of 1.7 million Americans getting injured every year and saved $2 billion, with a B, $2 billion in healthcare costs every year. And we spend $1,000 on that study and the studies that follow. Well, that got the attention of a number of people, one of which was at the end of his presidency, Ronald Reagan, in 1988. And I was contacted through President Reagan's aide who said, listen, President Reagan saw that information written up about your work of making people safer and healthier, preventing injuries specifically, and he wants to know if you would like to be involved in healthcare policy. I said, yeah. I ended up going to Washington in the spring of 1988, toward the end of the Reagan administration, and I ended up working with then Surgeon General C. Everett Koop. Now, here's what's frustrating. Dr. Koop, myself, and several others worked on healthcare policy in order to empower Americans by making them safer and healthier and cutting costs by putting them back in charge, every American back in charge of their healthcare finances.
Okay.
Through some things called medical IRAs, which are now called health savings accounts. Through having insurance companies compete across state lines rather than colluding. About importation of medications so that the pharmaceutical industry wasn't choking people on prices to enhance competition, to reduce regulation, to empower the role of primary care physicians. Now it's called direct primary care. So these are some of the issues we were talking about 30 years ago. And when Dr. Koop presented that to President Reagan, he said, look, this is going to help every American. This is going to increase access to care, cut costs, enhance the quality of care because it enhances competition, reduces regulations. But big insurance, big pharmaceutical companies, big medicine like the AMA are going to come after you on this and hate this. Reagan's response was, well, I don't care, let's just do what's right for people, which was very refreshing.
Yeah.
So we all started marching to that drum and pushing on that, and unfortunately, that was toward the end of his administration, and there comes George Bush the First. Well, when Dr. Koop presented this to George Bush the first, the answer was, no, we can't do that because we get a lot of financial support from the insurance industry, pharmaceutical industry, big medicine. Now it goes on the back burner. It went on the back burner for his 4 years. Then Clinton comes in. Clinton people contact me. I present the same information to them, and their response was, no, we get a lot of support from the insurance industry, pharmaceutical industries, big medicine. We can't do that. And I came to realize very early, Mike, that there's one political party in Washington. They're owned and operated by the same globalist syndicate. They're called the Republicans. And they're not just Democrats, they're also Republicans.
Right.
Because the same response we got from George Bush the first was the same response we got from Bill Clinton, was the same response we got by George W. Bush, and forget Obama because he was in bed with the globalists. They're all globalists.
Oh, yeah.
And they're only going to pay homage to the people and entities that pour huge amounts of money in their pockets, which is the globalist syndicate, and not you or me or any citizens in the United States, Canada, wherever. So that was a very frustrating situation. Now, when Obama became president, I got wind through my contacts in Washington that he, very early in his presidency, was going to try to do something to have government involvement to a huge degree in health care. And about a month after he was inaugurated, they started to push this very large bill called the stimulus bill that was about shovel-rated jobs and the like.
Yeah.
Well, I was told, watch that bill when it comes out because there's going to be something about a government takeover of health care in that. And when the Congressional Budget Office downloaded it that evening, I downloaded it, went through it. It took me about 400 pages, but 400 pages, I got to a part that was very similar to what was tried under Clinton, which was called Hillary Care, which was a government takeover of the system. And it was a system that focused on the most inhumane type of cost-cutting, which is the rationing and denying of care. I ended up speaking out and presenting the information on the different parts of the stimulus bill, which was the first part of Obamacare. Obamacare, which is a government-run globalist takeover of the healthcare system, was two parts. Not just the healthcare bill that passed in 2010, but in fact, the rationing boards, the enforcement boards, what Sarah Palin called the death panels, did exist, but they were in the stimulus bill, the first part of the healthcare bill. Now, I started to present some information around the country on my radio show, Operation Freedom, which airs every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern. If folks are interested, they can tune in live by streaming the show live by going to DaveJanda.com every Sunday, 2 to 5 Eastern. But I started presenting this information around the country. And I ended up, somebody videotaped one of my presentations and put a segment of it up on YouTube. It became the largest viewed video on a public policy issue in YouTube's history. I think it ended up about 3 million hits.
Wow.
Now, that brought more attention from the Obama administration on Dave Janda.
Right.
And you talk about the deep state. Well, here's an example of the deep state. After that video started circulating, I ended up getting a notification from the Internal Revenue Service that my wife and I and family were going to be audited. I told our accountants, when you meet with them, ask them why we're being audited. And our accountant said, well, what do you think they're going to say? I go, I believe they're trying to send me a message to shut up on my radio show, shut up about Obamacare. They're going to tell you it has to do with my radio show and my opposition to Obamacare. They said, Dave, they're not going to say that. So my accountants met with the IRS representatives. I was in clinic seeing patients. I get a call from the accountants after they were done talking to the IRS agents the first time. And they said, sit down, Dave, because we walked in the room and we asked your question knowing full well they wouldn't answer it. And they look straight at us and they go, it starts with his radio show. And they go, Dave, the message delivered to us is stop your radio show, stop speaking against Obamacare, and the audit goes away.
Wow.
Now, I refuse to do that. I kept speaking against Obamacare. I kept speaking against the deep state. I still do to this day. Mike, that audit lasted 9 horrible months. And let me tell you the kind of stuff they did, briefly. Let people realize what a fascist government will do against freedom fighters. At one point, they said, well, Janda lectures all over the country on healthcare policy, but he says he doesn't get paid. Well, we find that hard to believe. My account says he doesn't get paid. He refuses to get paid because he believes he's doing his patriotic duty of informing people around the country of what's really happening, something that the media should be doing that they're not doing. Well, we're going to check into this. Go right and check. Check away. They came back and they said, well, we checked into it. He didn't get paid. Yeah, that's right. Well, we've never heard of this, they said. Well, now you have. And then they came back and they go, but he claims some deductions. Well, yeah, if he's going to lecture on these issues and he's paying his own airfare and hotel and food and he's not getting reimbursed and he's not getting paid, those are legitimate business expenses based on this part of the code. Well, it is, but we want some documentation. Well, you already talked to these people and they told you you didn't get paid. Well, more do you want? Well, we want, and we already presented the receipts. Well, we want programs from every place he spoke over the past 3 years to document that he actually spoke. Okay, well, I save them. And we made copies and we provided them. And then they came back and they said, well, just because his name is on the program doesn't mean he spoke. We want a letter from each of these organizations that he actually spoke. Well, I say thank you email. So we redacted the names, the addresses, the phone numbers, the email addresses, but it documented what I spoke on, where I spoke, the crowd reaction. We gave them those copies. And then listen to this part. They came back and they go, well, that's pretty well complete, but we need one more piece of information. Counsel, what more do you want? This is crazy. This is harassment. They said, well, we need a list of every person who was in each one of these audiences. And they said, that's unconstitutional.
How is that even possible?
Yeah, he goes, first of all, he doesn't have it. Second of all, if he did, he wouldn't turn it over. This is unconstitutional. This is harassment.
No kidding.
Why in the world would you need that? Well, if there are any federal employees in the crowd, these lectures could be considered lobbying, and lobbying expenses are not deductible.
Wow.
Now, this is the kind of garbage that these deep state senior executive service people play when they're dealing with the freedom movement. Well, and that audit lasted for 9 months. They never found any unreported income. But let me tell you, I believe what they were trying to do is consume, because at the time I was a surgeon. I was taking care of people. I think they were trying to get in my head, and they were trying, because, it takes a lot of time digging up all these records and all this stuff. They were trying to get me to make a mistake, hurt somebody, and then I would be involved in a lawsuit, which fortunately did not happen. But this is what we're dealing with when we're dealing with a fascist, totalitarian government.
Well, they were doing this with anybody involved with the Tea Party. They were getting audits. If there was Christian groups out there, they were going in and auditing them and denying them benefits that they could have had. This was the big story. And, I mean, we've got Wayne Simmons coming on the show on Thursday night when I host for Rants of Izzo on Mojo 50. And it was the same thing with him. He started speaking out about Benghazi, and all of a sudden they just brought the hammer down. They warned him, but that was their modus operandi. And you talk about government-mandated health care here in Canada, it's an absolute mess. America, do not be fooled into thinking we've got this wonderful free health care system that they always tell you. I hear it from Americans all the time, and I'm one of them. Okay, I'm an American living in Western Canada, but here's the deal. We are taxed to death for free health care. Taxed to death. And now, Dr. Janda, one of the platform promises of Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party that won the election last night is free pharmacare. That's right. Now they want to give you free drugs, which the only way they can do that is to jack your taxes. And if you think the pharmaceutical company is going to give the country a break on those prices, this is a disaster waiting to happen, Dr. Janda.
Well, and look, the globalist Trudeau is going to be padding the pockets of the globalist big pharmaceutical companies with this plan.
Yep.
You know, Mike, I did my fellowship at the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario, Canada. And when I did my fellowship up there, I did it in shoulder reconstructive surgery and sports medicine with the great Richard Hawkins, very well-known shoulder and sports medicine specialist. And that's what I went there to do my fellowship in. Well, it was, but I also got a background in a national healthcare delivery approach, the Canadian healthcare system.
Yeah.
And it actually helped formulate my foundation that I ended up bringing to Washington about the problem. Look, there are wonderful, dedicated physicians and nurses and therapists and physios in the Canadian system that, in spite of the system, they deliver high-quality care. But the system is stacked against the citizens, not the elite, but the citizens. And I saw that firsthand in Canada. You know, I wasn't there more than a couple days when I got called to the emergency room to see a patient who got injured in the workplace. And he injured his knee. And he tore a cartilage, and it was stuck in the middle of his knee, and he couldn't move his knee. And I go back to the clinic and go, we have Mr. So-and-so in the emergency room. He has a torn cartilage, can't move his knee. It's locked. He can't walk, let alone work. We need to get him in the clinic as soon as possible because he's going to need an arthroscopic surgery, which is an outpatient surgery, takes about an hour. And we can take care of that cartilage, and we can get him back to work in a couple weeks, max. And the secretary looked at me. She goes, okay, well, appointment. Here's his appointment. And I look at it. I go, no, you got this wrong. This appointment's for 6 months from now.
Yeah.
She goes, no, that's when his appointment is. I go, you got to be kidding me. His knee's going to be locked for 6 months. He won't work.
Yeah.
He won't even. Yeah, well, no, that's the way it is.
Yep.
I went back and told the poor guy, and the guy looks at me and goes, oh, okay, well, that's the way it is here in Canada.
Yep.
The guy comes in 6 months later, Mike. His knee's still locked. He can't work. He's getting around with crutches for 6 months. And I go to the secretary. We need to get him on the OR schedule right away.
Yeah.
Mike, it was another 6 months.
Jeez, are you serious? I'm surprised to hear it, but I'm not, because I've heard it over and over and over again. And here's the rub, okay? Anybody with the money to do it leaves Canada to go to the U.S. and get the surgery done. They campaigned on, we will not have a two-tiered healthcare system. I heard that during the Ralph Klein years here in Alberta. We will not have an American two-tier healthcare system. And Canadians all went, or like a bunch of trained seals, and voted for it like it was a good thing. Meanwhile, the people with the money to do it, they go down to the Mayo Clinic. They go down to other places. They don't get it here. They don't wait the 6 months. If you're an injured hockey player, you're not one of the little people. You get your emergency surgery right now. The rest of the country suffers, and you pay for it whether you like it or not.
No, I think that's very accurate. And I can tell you, I live in southeast Michigan. We're 30 miles away from the Canadian border at Windsor. Okay? I can tell you, usually by the beginning to mid-December, the province of Ontario runs out of funding for their healthcare system, and there are ambulances coming across the bridge and through the tunnel to bring patients for care here in the United States, because facilities are closed up in Canada. This is nuts, okay?
Yep.
And we already have a national health care delivery system in the United States. It's called the VA system, right?
Yep.
For the veteran. Let me tell you something. These veterans served our country courageously and honorably, and the care they get at a VA national health care delivery system is pathetic. It's sick.
Yeah, it's gotten better under President Trump. My father actually...
Well, it has a long way to go.
Yeah.
Remember, at the end of the Obama administration, they did some study, and they said, over the last 10 years, thousands of patients in the VA system never got care and actually died.
Yep. And
So
they were joking about it. In several VA offices, they were making little jokes and making puppets and I hope they hang themselves. But I'll tell you what, it's different from state to state, too, from what like my father lived in New Mexico. He was dealing with the VA there, and he said it was absolutely terrible. But now he's in Tennessee, and he said it's top-notch. And he said since the Trump administration came in and started making changes, he has seen a big difference in VA-level care. Now, let's switch over to President Trump. I believe that man is a godsend. Canada is in big trouble with this Trudeau administration, but what I'm hearing from a lot of Canadians is that they are hopeful that people like General Vallely, President Trump, the Northern Army of Virginia, they're hoping that these people are successful in their mission, and that might somehow strike a stake into the heart of the vampire that's sitting over top of Canada. Dr. Janda.
Well, I agree with you about President Trump and courageous patriots such as General Paul Vallely and General Tom McInerney and many others that have stepped forward and have put their lives on the line to take on the deep state, the globalist syndicate, the New World Order crowd, whatever you want to call them. And I truly believe this fake Russian collusion hoax, which imploded upon the deep state, followed by the fake Ukrainian hoax, which is now being followed with the impeachment hoax.
Yeah.
These are not positions of power by the deep state that the media would like the public to believe. This is the propaganda they're pushing. Because let's face it, what some people call the mainstream media, which is nothing more than what I call the bought-off lamestream fake media, is a tentacle of the deep state. Everything they put out is pure propaganda. I believe the Russian fake hoax, the Ukrainian hoax, the impeachment hoax are all being generated by the deep state out of panic, desperation, fear about losing control.
Absolutely.
And I believe they're not coming at it from a position of power. And in fact, the freedom movement is in power here. And what we're seeing when Hillary starts tweeting about potential rivals of hers being Russian agents, just as Donald Trump would. This is not somebody who is acting out of a power base.
No, exactly. Dr. Janda, we got about 30 seconds left. Dr. Janda, we got about 30 seconds left. We got to wrap it up. What would you have to say in closing, and where can people find you?
So they can find me on my YouTube channel, Operation Freedom. My website, Dave Janda, Janda, DaveJanda.com. We have a free site, a public site, also a subscription site. Very reasonably priced with extra shows, extra analysis, extra guests. This week, we have famed whistleblowers, real whistleblowers, not gossip blowers, famed whistleblowers from the NSA, Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe on. They can follow me on my radio show, which they can network through the internet at DaveJanda.com every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern.
Beautiful. Dr. Janda, we got to let you go. Thanks for joining the show, and we will definitely have you back in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, super patriot Dr. Dave Janda. It doesn't get any better than a guy like him, and we're going to be bringing more on this show in the near future. I mean, how could we not, right? How can we pay no attention to this very important time in history? Ladies and gentlemen, Americanuck Radio with Mike Phillip. Stick around for the wife of Kevin Sorbo, Sam Sorbo on Mojo 50. Radio.
This is the seditious, rabble-rousing, liberty-loving, home of fun, entertaining, and compelling talk.